Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True. It's Monday and time for our weekly spin through some of the more notable stories to come out of the outdoor industry over the past week. And today, we'll be talking about Lolë's acquisition of Sanuk, BD's retail partnership, and Jack Wolfskin's American retreat. But before we get to any of those, we got a few housekeeping items for you. Like we always ask you, please follow and rate the show wherever you're listening on any podcast app. You guys have been really coming through on this, and it's been really helping us out. We're finding new listeners every single day. So leave us that 5-star rating if you haven't already. Please help out the show. And also send your feedback by sending an email to myrockfight@gmail.com. And lastly, head over to rockfight.co. Click join the mailing list so that you can get our weekly newsletter, news from the front, in your inbox every Sunday morning. I think that's about it. That wraps it up. Let's start the show. All right, I want to open today by talking about an article published a few weeks ago by Footwear News called The Greatest Shoes of All Time, a look at the icons of footwear. It's a pretty great list of 77 footwear brands and styles across pretty much genres of fashion and athletics. It's shoes. It's not really, definitely shoes. Like we were going to talk about boots at some point, but no boots really included. It's a lot of athletic shoes, high heels, pumps, flats, loafers type shoes, a lot of silhouettes. And I've linked the article in the show notes so you can see the whole thing. And really, my only criticism of the list, I thought it was a pretty great list. Even though it included Crocs, which we're not going to talk about anymore here, but they didn't rank all 77, and I felt like that was a missed opportunity. Like, come on, man! Like, name the number one greatest shoe of all time.
We call that a cop-out, Colin.
It is a bit of a cop-out, but the variety of the 77 styles was really well done. As looking through the list, I found 10 purely outdoor shoes, and outdoor in the sense that they were either created for use on dirt, or their adoption or development played some specific role in the growth of an outdoor category. So what I'm going to do today with producer Dave's help, we're going to do what Footwear News didn't have the balls to do. We're going to rank the 10 outdoor styles from the list of the greatest shoes of all time. I think I was pretty stoked that there was 10. There's 77, 10 outdoor shoes. It felt right. There's a lot of sneakers we're not going to talk about. So in terms of truly outdoor shoes, I was like, 10's a good number. I mean, it's tough. It's a broad list. So 10 felt right. So anyway, we're just teasing you too, Footwear News. We're just teasing. We want you to rank these things because, it's a strong list. You should rank them. It's been really much more fun. You could have done it every year then. It's this year's edition of the iconic list. It changed. The number one change this year.
That brand
whatever.
that you're worried about offending, they're not going to advertise. Okay? It's just not going to happen. Don't worry about it.
It's true.
Let it fly.
It's true.
Let it fly.
So producer Dave will be weighing in. He has very strong footwear opinions as well. All right, so at number 10, we have the Merrell Moab, and I had to put Merrell Moab at number 10 because it's the worst shoe on the list, the worst outdoor shoe on this list. It's the entry I have the biggest beef with because if you're going to put a Merrell on the list, I feel like it should be the Jungle Runner or the Jungle Mach. The Moab didn't come out until 2007, well after the sneaker, hiking boot, hybrid, and shoe category had been established. By the time Moab came out, also trail runners were pretty well established as an option for hikers as well. So of all of these 10, this was an easy, just put it at the bottom. I'm guessing Footwear News wanted, shoes that you could still buy, but,
Look,
but still.
I totally agree with you about the Jungle Mach. That has a much more important place in kind of at least the pantheon of outdoor footwear for sure. But I will give the Moab credit in the sense that they have really come to define what that light hiker, mid-range shoe. It's almost like the SUV of shoes. It's not a truck. It's not a car. It's somewhere in between, and they all look alike, right? Everybody followed that look. So it's hard to find one that does it. So
Definitely.
Just based on that, pretty important silhouette. Even though you're right, it didn't invent the category or, it's a relatively new shoe.
Yeah, visually, you're right. It's still impacting the category, right? Like Oboz, other brands can probably look at that and be like,
Keen,
there's definitely some design aesthetics that we share.
Yeah,
Keen, absolutely. Keen for sure.
Very much the same cut from that same cloth. So,
all right, number 9, and longtime listeners, you're going to I don't want you to at me on this because I included it at, as an outdoor shoe, but it's the Timberland 6-inch boot, a.k.a. the yellow boot, a.k.a. the 161s, a.k.a. the Wheaties. The classic boot earns its place on this list, even if its breakthrough came from more, urban fashion-y adoptions. When the yellow boot, which was an 8-inch version, actually came out in 1973, it was a truly waterproof leather work boot that used injection molding to create the outsole. That's a lot of innovation that came out of this boot, and it set the table for outdoor footwear to come. So I'm putting it on the list.
Oh, I think it belongs there for sure. I mean, what would you pair with your puffer jacket in 1990s rap videos if you didn't have Tim's?
The waterproofness, the injection molding, and ultimately completing the outdoor urban look. Yeah. What are you going to do? And it's now, like, we're going to talk, a couple of these are now in the kit. Like, if you're like, I'm creating in my closet of things, that staples I need to have, the yellow boot is one of those shoes that you are going to have. All right, number 8, the UGG Classic Short Boot. So Timberland actually kicks off a run of 4 straight styles that I feel like have meaningful outdoor heritage, but eventually became fashion staples. I think there's probably a lot of people out there that buy UGGs thinking that, not knowing that they started as artisanal sheepskin boots in rural Australia in the 1920s. Then they became a crucial part of surf culture. And then they finally sort of hit the big time thanks to Oprah Winfrey in 2003. Like we were just talking about, those staples in your closet, right? The Chuck Taylors, the Timberlands, Adidas Superstars, whatever. They've endured repeat fashion cycles at this point and now become sort of timeless. But surfing is ultimately what made UGGs great. It's what they're known for from a functional point of view, a post-surfing shoe. So I have them at number 8.
I always thought it was the shoe you wore when you were disheveled coming out of a Starbucks. Based on all the imagery, that was just
all the A-listers.
Right, or Britney Spears.
Number 7, the Sperry Topsider. And I think this is the perfect example of a product built to suit a need, right? Because topsiders were invented after Paul Sperry, who was a sailor, fell off of his boat and decided to build a footwear for boat decks. And, nowadays, I think you're more likely to see kind of the boat shoes on the feet of like New York frat bros wearing Chubbies and Vineyard Vines t-shirts, but we wouldn't have modern water shoes without Sperry Topsiders. And Patagonia vests, that's right. That's right. No longer embroidered with their own company. They were for
There's workarounds.
The
There's
workarounds,
firm. Colin.
Yes, exactly. Let's put stickers.
I agree with you, but this is hardly an outdoor shoe. Yes, it had its like sailing roots.
It's a boat shoe,
right? It had its roots, but once it hit the preppy handbook, it really is now It's now meant to be paired with Argyle socks, right? This is
just like the Timberlands meant to be paired with like jeans and a like a t-shirt. I mean, it's not an outdoor shoe anymore. I think that's the point of like this arc of the list. It's like these styles aren't really outdoor shoes anymore, but they were.
It really sets off that cable knit sweater that's around your shoulders. Like it's just fantastic.
It like ties it all together. It's kind of like the dude's rug.
Sperry Topsider, the rug of footwear.
Well, the last one of these sort of iconic older styles that were outdoor who now maybe aren't as much anymore is the LL Bean bean boot. And it might be because I grew up in the Northeast, but nothing says, like sloppy winter weather than a pair of bean boots. These were created in 1911 as a hunting boot by the just incredibly named Leonwood Bean to keep his feet from getting cold and wet while out hunting. Pretty much another preppy staple for as long as they were worn for function as well. So, good job, Leon.
Solid inclusion here. Finally, one that really lives up to its standing here. Like that is iconic, functional outdoor footwear at its best.
Can we offer some advice to people out there maybe having children about the way the naming conventions for the names you pick for your kid? Like, don't do your kid dirty with Leon
Dirty?
Wood.
Are you kidding?
There's no reason he went by
LL. That's
the
aspiration, right? The LL. And how did that work out? He had an incredible music career. So I think you got to think about that.
Where was the LL Cool J, LL Bean collaboration? How did this never happen?
Right. You're absolutely right.
Oh my God. Missed opportunity.
Well, up there in Maine, maybe they're just now getting some of that new music.
Okay, so that's basically the top 5, right? Oh, the bottom 5. The top 5, I'm kicking it off with the Hoka Speed Goat. And personally, I wanted to put the Speed Goat lower on this list because the Bondi was the first style that kind of kicked it all off for Hoka. But as Footwear News points out in their blurb, the Speed Goat is probably the style that most people have bought from Hoka when it comes to trail pursuits. And you kind of have to give Hoka credit for being the catalyst for maximal midsoles coming out of the minimalist movement of the early 2010s. And look, it's Hoka. Like, they're still the footwear brand of the moment. So, it's kind of hard to put them really any lower on this list.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
All right, guys, get ready. This is where Dave's going to blow his top. I have number 4 on the list. The Teva Original Universal. Dave Karstad is the biggest Teva defender in the universe. I wrote in my notes that Teva is sort of the Pearl Jam of outdoor shoes, and that they're a really authentic and innovative brand, or band, as it were. And as soon as it was launched, though, it became an instant success and immediately adopted by the fashion side of things. But I don't think, that unlike Pearl Jam, they haven't aged as well. And it's not really their fault. I mean, the two-strap design is a staple of off-brand sandals that you find at Famous Footwear and DSW. But it doesn't diminish the Teva story, Dave. It doesn't.
No.
Look, he looks so sad over here. I don't want to tease what's at number 1 on the list, but unlike that product, it was Teva that actually brought the innovation to river enthusiasts everywhere. Before that, it was flip-flops and old sneakers before Teva entered the scene. So Teva deserves some more love, but I really don't feel like I can put them higher than 4 on this list. Go ahead.
I would agree with you if I didn't know what 2, 3, and 1 were. But look, Teva didn't just take you're just talking about the River Runner. Yeah, they invented the category, right? This is a category invention, and no other shoe up here actually even can make that claim that it invented a new section of the wall.
I'd say LL Bean and the Sperry topsider would like a word.
Those are styles.
They sort of...
Those are styles. Well, I'm just saying, in terms of an iconic product, Hall of Fame worthy product, this is the one that created the category, right? And it was a patented invention that that had its run, the 4-post kind of construction that other players couldn't emulate. So they were able to kind of, I think, to their benefit and their detriment, didn't have to innovate as much beyond. So they kind of got complacent in that. And I think their trajectory has kind of shown kind of fits and starts of that. And they certainly did allow a lot of other players to come into the market at one time who now kind of created the modern sports sandal category for sure.
Yeah.
So I think that on alone, and I love the authentic story. Mark Thatcher as a river guide, kind of seeing a need, using the Velcro or hook and loop, as they would call, without violating a patent or a copyright. But so I think based on that, it has a pretty strong claim. I mean, look, number 4 is a good number, but yeah, and you're right. They still kind of look the way they did. In some ways, that's good, but it certainly did allow. It allowed other players to update the model and maybe even take it to better places.
Plus, think of all those 79-year-old bookshop owners that wouldn't have had shoes if it weren't for Teva.
Well, this goes back to some of our other missing sandals that are on here that they would have just stuck with.
They would have spent that. They buy the off-price brand. We don't buy Tevas. That's expensive.
That's right.
Well, we're not done with river shoes yet. Well, before we get there, though, number 3, I have the Sorel Caribou. And I'm curious your opinion on this. I think of all the brands that Columbia has acquired over the years, the one with the least amount of Columbia stink on them is probably Sorel. I mean, they're just simply warm winter boots. Simple and effective. They've grown. Columbia has grown the line, pretty extensively compared to what it was when they acquired it. But it's like, look, what do you want to wear when you're shoveling the driveway, or you can also use it on that snowshoe hike, and a trusty pair of Sorels checks a lot of winter boxes. I think of all the shoes on this list, if you're gonna pick one, that's what's the one you're gonna default to in the most basic place that you would need it? It's Sorels on a cold and snowy day. And so I kind of felt like that carried some weight to be like, look, this is just the simplest thing that works the best.
Yeah, look, Sorel, great authenticity. Their contribution is, again, the stylization, right? And they had a great run with that, and Columbia kind of bought them on a high for sure. But it's still a good look at the outdoor. It's very much similar to the rise of UGG, taking this kind of basic functional product and bringing style and having that style catch. It's what everyone's kind of looking for.
All right, number 2 and actually number 1 as well, which we'll get to, but put both of them at the number 2 and number 1 spot because these are shoes that have sort of endeared themselves to multiple audiences. There's multiple groups can lay claim to both of these styles, even if the heritage shows who they were invented for specifically. So number 2 is the Ultra Lone Peak, and when it comes to Lone Peak, it was brought to market as a running shoe. I love that. Footwear News actually chose to feature an older style of the Lone Peak, which I actually owned that one, and I loved that one. It was a completely dorky looking, terrible looking shoe, but just performed beautifully. But that was a running shoe that was then adopted by the hiking and thru hiking community. It's beloved by the ultra running world. It's definitely the shoe I've worn the most over the last 10 years, so I will totally admit my bias here. But I do think I would like to see them put a Vibram outsole on it, Ultra, if you're listening. Make me happy. Maybe make me one of those. Do that specifically for me for putting you at number 2 on this list. But I think, the Lone Peak has been not as successful probably as a Speedgoat from a units sold. But in terms of people who wear the Lone Peak, they'll die on that hill. Maybe sometimes literally,
Is that really a good quality statement there, Colin?
No, I shouldn't have said that.
I too am a fan of Ultra's shoes. I wear them almost exclusively for that kind of stuff. However, my homerism aside, I will not let it cloud my judgment. They do not belong at number 2. They don't belong on this list. Right? We're talking about all time. Come on. They're just getting going. Let's see. It's a running shoe.
Why does Hoka belong on the list then? They came out around the same time. Hoka. Why is Hoka allowed on the list?
Put them on the list.
Well,
put them on the list.
Number one, we didn't make the list. We didn't just choose. This is Footwear News' list. We're just ranking their shoes.
I love my Ultras, and I think they're a great crossover. But how do you not have Solomon on this list? You're talking about crossovers.
That's a really good
what the heck?
Point.
Where is? Come on.
God, did we miss Solomon? Do I need to go just double check the list again real quick?
We missed a few other things for sure. I mean, you get to your
no Solomon.
No Solomon.
Well, right, and we'll get into some omissions in a second. I think we're ranking the 10 that we found on their list.
Sure.
So I don't really know. I don't think. I think maybe you could make the case for swapping Ultra and Hoka, but I personally think the broader adoption of the Lone Peak kind of warrants mentioning. So, and that also plays into the number 1, which is the Chaco Z sandal. I mean, of these 10 shoes, I don't know what else it could be. You mentioned about when we were talking about Teva, they absolutely created the sports sandal category, but then Chaco just kind of picked up the ball and ran with it. It's become their river shoes, their climbing approach shoes, they're the go-to summer shoe for anyone living in a mountain town. This is definitely, they talk about that closet and your kit in the closet and the shoes you have in it. Maybe it isn't everybody that has one of these, but if you do stuff in the outdoors, you got a pair of Chacos. Yeah. And it really completed the costume for what an outdoorsy person wears, with the plaid shirt, the 5-panel hat, and a pair of Patagonia baggies.
Without a doubt.
Right?
The Z-strap created that look to it. The sculpted footbed, too, which gave you a little bit more support than the Teva, which is flat.
Oh, yeah.
Also created that sidewall kind of impression that it just looked sleeker, right? It just looked like, for sure. No, they did. They perfected the silhouette, for sure. No doubt. Are they the number 1 outdoor shoe on the list? Maybe.
I don't know what you put above it. I think when you think about what it means to the community of people who wear these products, it's one of those you got to have it. Now, I think unfortunately for them, they're owned by Wolverine, who I think is doing their damnedest to kill it. They've had a giant line expansion over the years. There's been a massive decline in qualities. I've talked to people who are repping them, who are really disappointed with some of what they're doing there.
Colin,
so we'll see what happens there.
Wolverine has their hands full trying to kill Merrill. So I think that Chaco might be kind of just avoiding some of the glare of that.
It's a hive mentality.
It's just a little bit like they're just going to move into the shadow a little bit. Okay, you guys go ahead and I'll try to exist.
I feel like Merrill's kind of like the cockroach of outdoor shoes. He just can't die. You're not going to kill Merrill. What are you doing?
It's true. Right.
But, listen, what's our favorite, shoe on this show? It's the Bedrock, right? So I think that's an ascendant brand. I know our art director, Sarah Gensert, very proud of her. She got her first pair she did. I literally was sitting in a locker room at an ice rink wearing Bedrocks. And she's like, hey, I'm thinking of getting these. Are they really that good? I sent her a picture of my feet. I'm like, I'm wearing them right now. They're the best shoe I own. So who knows how long Chaco sits on the throne. But I think when you're looking at, again, these 10 specific styles that were on this specific list, from the start, I'm like, well, this is number 1. All right, so who are your omissions? Let's talk about who should have been on the list.
Should at least mention what we just brought up, Solomon. How do you not have Solomon in terms of
I don't know
bringing this crossover of technical and running into light hiking,
and
fast
they had a
trail.
moment a couple years ago with Rihanna.
They did.
Like, they're having fashion
but
moments now.
It's a really important brand in the space. Like it's a solid piece to it. When we're talking about Merrell, I think there was a reason for the Moab's inclusion because of how the silhouette has become de facto. But if you're talking about like the history of, say, the light hiker, which that kind of fits within, the high-tech Sierra Light. Like, that's the first light hiker of the category in the late 70s.
High tech was
Before they stripped all the soul out of that brand and took it into Payless. But it really set the tone that Nike's approach, the ACG, Merrell's, the solos of the 80s, even, Montreal and Garmont and Vasque all started to change their styles during that.
Before it was sneakers.
That's right.
Boots.
It was absolutely, and you got to give high tech credit for that. So I think that's a big piece of it. ACG in general. I mean, not.
Wow, there was so much Nike
I guess
on
that
this
makes
list.
sense for sure. I just, like I said, super important to pushing the outdoor footwear category into some style and some mainstream.
If nothing else out of fear, it's like, shit, Nike's coming for us. We got to do other stuff. The big one for me that wasn't on here was Birkenstock. Like, I don't know how you don't have Birkenstock on this list.
I see that, again, important to the community. Maybe that's a lifetime achievement award as opposed to an actual kind of part of the functional sneaker piece of this, but I agree. Yeah. I mean, again, you kind of hard not to have them as part of the conversation. We have the Teva. Okay, it pains me to say this, but here we go. I think you got to have a Vibram 5 Fingers up here.
I thought of that too.
This was a change as much as it, like I said,
it's an icon.
It is, and they changed the conversation in terms.
It's like if you won the Razzie and an Oscar in the same year.
That's right. It was a big year. So I think that's a missing piece. And you know what, too? The other one I would put on here, and I don't know if it got there, but the rainbow. The flip-flop.
Oh, flip-flop. They had another flip-flop on there. I can't remember the name of it. It seemed like they were alluding this was one of the original flip-flops.
Talk about saturating the surf culture. Also, if you were going to get a flip-flop and you were kind of adjacent to that, it just, for so long, fit that bill before everybody made flip-flops, before it became just the de facto, and before brands like Olakai came in and like upped the ante in terms of what a premium kind of offering could be. So, I don't know. Those to me kind of fit this, maybe should have a little bit more. Actually, I have one more outdoor footwear that did not get on our list, and that would be the Chuck Taylor or the All-Star. I mean, because if you take a look at the 1960s and 70s, and you look at these images, and you'll see this big bearded dude with this framed pack, right, and this roll and a shovel hanging down the side, right? He's going camping, and he's got a freaking Army issue shovel. And the big athletic socks, cutoffs, and Chucks. And, I'm going on a 5-day hike. Didn't even think of it, right? So I think
we were so much cooler back then.
Right. Well, at least they had more foot problems in their older age. But I have to say that gets honorable mention into the community as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. The only ones I had to kind of build off what you said is obviously the Birkenstock. I feel like is a miss. And by the way, they did 77. Just like add 23 more, make it an even 100.
Right.
No, but the Nike waffle trainer, which I know again the specific style probably not available, is why it's not on. But that the Bill Bowerman outsole like influenced so much of athletics and outdoor footwear. And then the Montreal Hard Rock, because that just was like Montreal was you mentioned Montreal earlier, and like, that was another, not to take another shot at Columbia, but it's like took the coolest shoe in the marketplace, in the outdoor marketplace, bought a Montreal and then kind of killed it. And the Hard Rock was the shit shoe back in like 02, 03, something right around there. So, but overall, I mean, that's a tough. Like anytime you're making lists, you're gonna have people like us being critical. I was making a little bit of fun of you, Footwear News. Thanks for putting it out. Thanks for giving us some fodder to talk about. This was fun for sure. All right, well, that wraps up that segment. Right now, though, it is time for our weekly segment. To make sure you're getting more out of the outdoors, it's time for More with Thermore. So the last few weeks during More with Thermore, we've talked about the different Thermore products that apparel brand designers and developers can implement into garments. And one thing we haven't mentioned for a while, and maybe the most important from the Thermore stable of amazing insulation, is EcoDown Fibers Ocean which is made exclusively from Ocean Cycle certified plastics, the same ocean-bound plastics that make up as much as 80% of plastic pollution in our oceans. EcoDown Fibers Ocean is light, soft, warm, and durable. It's easily washable and avoids clumping. Ocean-bound plastics is plastic waste discarded near the ocean and therefore at risk of entering the ocean, like bottles, cartons, and bags. By taking this waste and turning it into something useful, Thermore is not only creating the best insulation for future outdoor apparel, but they're doing it in a meaningful way. Because whether you're making amazing new garments or staying warm and safe out on the trail, you can do more with Thermore.
Well said.
Thank you. All right, let's run through some headlines to come out of the outdoor industry over the past week. First up, per SGB and Footwear News, a lot of Footwear News play today. Almost a year since Deckers announced their intentions to sell off Sanuk, it finally has. Lolë Brands, it's Lolë, by the way, I looked that up. Not Lolë, Lolë. It's Lole with an umlaut, so they're big Motley Crue fans up there in Canada. Lolë Brands picked up the casual footwear brand in a deal where the terms were not disclosed. Todd Steele, Lolë's CEO, said that there are a lot of common themes between our two brands, from sustainability to creativity to the importance and connection of community. We also think Sanuk can benefit from our global perspective since a large part of our business is done outside of the U.S. The acquisition is the second for Lolë, who in April 2023, they also bought sustainable fashion retailer Epoch Evolution, also for an undisclosed amount. So Lolë, like I mentioned, is a Canadian athletic brand. I always kind of viewed them as someone who's riding Lululemon's coattails, like not to be crass, but it's kind of how I viewed them. If you Google Lolë, one of the suggested answers that pops up is Lolë made by Lululemon? So I suppose the acquisition of Sanuk is to continue to become that larger athletic brand and compete with the Lulus of the world. But, looking at the brand's website, I kind of have to wonder why Sanuk. I mean, I guess there doesn't have to be synergy between the two brands, but they're so athletic and lifestyle focused, and Sanuk is really that kind of bro-y frat guy vibe going on. So I don't know. Maybe it's better to acquire than to build, and they just saw this as a good opportunity. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, you're right. It would seem the vibes definitely don't connect for sure. But look, if you can segment your business and play Sanuk, it's funny. I never connected Sanuk with kind of the frat guy kind of thing. It was to me always more of a groovy kind of lifestyle brand where Hey Dude falls into that frat guy character.
It's pretty close. Pretty fine line.
There is a fine line. Dave Matthews is the center of that Venn diagram, actually.
Just standing there with his arms crossed,
just
like right in the middle,
taking tickets from both sides.
Going, baby.
That's right. So I guess that's good. When you said that Lolë had something in common, they were talking about in common with Sanuk, I was like, oh, they were owned and discarded by Deckers too? Like that was my first thought, which actually realized that we're having a budding category starting to develop. It's called the CBDK, or Cool Brands Deckers Killed. Right? I mean,
oh my God. Is there
it's a category.
Like,
you go back, look, Deckers had their own flip-flop before they licensed Teva, before they licensed UGG and developed that side of their business, which was a cool, funky, authentic little flip-flop, again, very core to the surf culture, but that was kind of its cool piece. And then they bought Simple, right? They bought the original Simple. And, for those that don't know or remember Simple, I call it's kind of the icon of Gen X nihilism, and I don't care. Right? It was kind of the sarcastic. It was basic. It was simple. Everything about their brands.
I'm wearing
but
sneakers,
they were better
too.
Sneakers, right? They were cool. They were well made. And fun fact that Simple was actually the original sponsor to the first year of the Warped Tour. It was actually the Simple Warped Tour. Yeah. When they were kind of just
Simple or dope shoes, and that was one of you hold on. I get it that you're like the low point of the cycle where people weren't wearing shoes that look like that. That's gonna come back. It's a classic look. There's such a good looking shoe.
That's right. So they've been passed around,
and they did.
So that's kind of a cool, and of course, the Warped Tour would go on to be one of the most successful music festivals of all time, especially in an era that was filled with them. So Deckers had that. Then they gave that away after just kind of burying it. Now they've done the same thing to Sanuk. Why they never took Teva into that realm, I don't understand. That could have been easily a pivot, which, again, getting some of that lifestyle identifier that Jocko filled as this kind of, so they've always kind of pushed against it. Anu, I don't think will ever join that club, actually, even if they do get rid of it. I don't
I don't know. I'm still taking bets if Anu actually brings a shoe to market.
You're right.
The second
I would
time
say it was
around.
not and never will be cool. But that's just kind of the...
They killed it once, and then they're going to try. Right, they're going to basically going to kill it again.
So yeah, I do. I think we've got a segment, or at least a Reddit thread showing up here and trying to be formed. So...
You think, like, if you pan around inside, Decker's HQ, like if you get a Teva, that's like it's like the dudes from Shawshank, like they all just they're institutionalized at this point. They don't really like being there, but they're like, this is all I've known my entire life. Right. And then you get over to Hoka, and it's like a party because they're like the cool, like making money brand, like they're getting whatever they want from management.
I think there's
Sanuk is throwing their own party now, like we're free, right. Yeah, we're out, baby.
I think Teva's still convinced that they can be a fashion brand on the order of those. Heels and loafers and things you were talking about earlier, and it's just
well, their big push now is running shoes. They're making open-toed running shoes.
Who you are. It's such a vibrant category. You could just really take, but hey.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's a Sanuk I never really got. I mean, even when I thought they were cool when they launched, it was the whole like, hey, these are sandals, even though they were shoes. Like that was the whole vibe, right? It's like these are like basically closed-toed
Slip-ons.
Sandals, right? That was their whole thing. Yeah, and the first one they made was like using like artificial grass and all that kind of stuff, right? Get it. I don't really know what value something like that holds. They never were able to bring that kind of iconic, like this is if we have that line up in your closet again, like here's the staple from each brand, like what's your Sanuk, or do you even have a Sanuk, and that now is that what Hey Dude's trying to become.
Clearly.
Like, and I think it's a very specific kind of consumer. Clearly I'm sure they've sold a lot of them.
Jimmy Buffett made a career off of it.
Yeah, correct. Right. Yeah, there you go. Go set up a tent at all like the Jimmy Buffett cover bands. I just don't know how it integrates, or maybe it doesn't need to. Maybe their plans are not to integrate. I mean, we're going to see. It's early days here. Right. But it's just like Lolë, you think about like Lulu is like launching shoes that are in line with like, I'm a Lulu customer. I want to have Lulu shoes. I don't look at the Lolë line and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to rock some Sanuks with that. It just doesn't match. No. So I don't know if to keep an eye on it. All right, next up. Per SGB, Black Diamond Equipment is partnering with Wilderness Exchange, which is an outdoor gear shop in Denver, to launch the first partner-run mountain shop in North America. According to Don Bushy, the owner of Wilderness Exchange, Black Diamond, this is a quote, is the iconic North American climb, ski, and mountain equipment brand for many outdoor special retailers. It's their #1 brand in their shop. The vision is to create something beyond the standard mono-brand store. This will be a full-service specialty mountain shop with other complementary brands to complete the kit. Wilderness Exchange, they're actually going to close on October 27th for renovations and not reopen again until January. So they're sacrificing their holiday season to go and do this and be ready for this partnership. Details are pretty light. It's basically what I just read to you was kind of the summation of it all. I've actually reached out to Don Bushy and Neil Fisk, who's the president of Black Diamond, because I'd like to have them on the show in the future, because this is the kind of relationship I'm really excited to see how it plays out. I mean, historically, the models you'd see from brands when it comes to retail is either a shop in a store like Wilderness Exchange, like, hey, we have this little corner of the store, we brand it, and it's like, here's all the Black Diamond stuff. Or they just open up their own stores. And I've personally never believed in the brand store. I think it doesn't matter if it's a Stio or a Patagonia or whoever. I just think it's uninteresting from a consumer point of view. It's costly. I think there's frankly little upside from a brand point of view. I'm sure there's someone out there who could tell me how much money someone makes from this, but a Patagonia I think is different than a Stio. Like Stio's really hitching their horses to that wagon of like, we're opening our own stores. And to kind of take this idea of like, well, what if a brand effectively outsourced or licensed themselves to an independent retailer? I just think it makes a ton of sense. They can own the categories in the shop for the things that they make, and they can bring in the other brands. They can bring in other brands for the things that they don't. So for Black Diamond, it's like, hey, here's our skis, here's our climbing stuff, here's some of the apparel we have. Hey, we don't make trail running shoes. Great. Here's our footwear wall, which has no Black Diamond stuff on it. And I think if you look back at someone like the North Face, who started as a retailer and then eventually went on to make their own gear, the house lines of an REI or an EMS. This isn't that dissimilar, but it comes with way less risk for the dealer and probably for the brand as well. So anyway, I'm really excited to see how this plays out, and hopefully have some of these folks on the show to talk about it, because I think it's going to be really worth watching from that, how it could impact the larger outdoor retail landscape.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is absolutely the future and could have been done a long time ago. I do think there is a place for the mono store, if you will, as brand showcases.
I'm not saying it won't work. I just think as a strategy,
you can't rest
it's flawed.
on it for sure. I mean, certainly Filson has used it to good effect, and like you said, Patagonia.
Sure, right. Good
so
example.
there are places that it works. I think this idea, though, of a galaxy of brands really also shows the outdoor industry as a less kind of at your throat competitor and more there's room for everybody. So let's create a space that we can all, and the variety, you're going to bring in more customers. Like you said, the experience is going to be better. Let the bigger brands shoulder some of the cost here to help make it possible. That's what Black Diamond's doing here. I think it's fantastic.
But they don't have to sign a lease, and they don't have to have inventory specific
you're still
for
tied
it and pay
yeah,
people.
but you're still
and all
tied
this
together. But you're right. It does go on somebody else's books. But let's be clear, they're a part of this, and if it doesn't work, they're gonna take some loss.
Oh, sure.
But I think
and that's why hopefully Don comes on. I'm curious, I want to hear what he sees as the biggest upside of this as a retailer.
And then there's also again the kind of the future state of brands are going to need more IRL touch points as we start talking about circularity in a meaningful way, right? You got to have collection of product at end of life is a huge piece that hasn't been solved and must be solved in order for us to even make any of our wonderful technology work. You got to be able to collect back. And so the idea that they can have a bigger hand in the real estate and how that expands out means that now repair, that means collection, all of these things start to enter into a feasibility versus just a box that gets unchecked at the bottom and in a green statement. You know what I mean? It's just like, so that to me is a really exciting how we can open that kind of stuff up for brands.
I think just historically, everyone's just always looking for the silver bullet. It's like, I think, sorry, Steve, not just pick on you, but you're going in hard on catalogs and your own stores. And look, I'm happily to have, I think it's Sully over there on, and you could tell us about what you're working on too. I'm curious about that. But I think as we learned from, Owen Comerford, who was on this past week, talking about cost of goods, inventory, overhead from staff, all of these things, versus, hey, how about these specialty retailers do that work for you? And then for them, it's like, great, now I have a partner who's going to help invest back in my business. I'm sure there are pitfalls. I'm sure there are going to be ways this doesn't work, but I don't think it's been tried a whole bunch. And so I think kudos to BD for being creative, and kudos to, Don Bushy for saying let's give this a go. You're probably 2/3 of these categories for me anyway right now. So let's give this a go. Right. I had to drop this other little brand. Oh, well, I was going to sell BD anyway.
Oh. It's all fun and games until they get the brand standards book come down.
That's right. What do you mean no beer after 3 p.m.? And what do you mean?
Logo has to appear 57 times?
Well, you're joking, but it's true, right? Because there's brands who would be like, well, if we do this, this is the way we have to do it. It's kind of like, easy guy, still my shop, right? So there has to be a real alignment here for sure for it to work at all. Right. But keep an eye on this. Last story from today is from The Daily. Jack Wolfskin announced in May its intention to leave the U.S., and it appears it was a good decision. Owner of the German brand Topgolf Callaway. Seriously, I still can't get over this Topgolf Callaway that owns Jack Wolfskin. They acquired Jack Wolfskin in 2019 for a whopping $476 million. They said last week that Wolfskin has right-sized its business by choosing to focus on its core markets in Central Europe and China. And in that same article, in the Daily, renowned outdoor industry analyst Matt Powell said that Jack Wolfskin needs to be completely reimagined. And once that it is, the brand can then be reintroduced in the U.S. I guess that price tag, that $500 million price tag, means that at some point they're going to have to try to come back into the U.S. to make it worth it. But I'm not familiar enough with the Wolfskin line to sort of weigh in on to know what is or isn't working.
I would just say there's a lot of in that statement. Reimagined and reintroduced. That would imply that it has imagination and has been introduced, which I would say there is a no.
I didn't even know it was here, frankly.
Right. Well, look at their ad spend. Look at where they really spent their time building brand here, and it's no wonder. Right. And again,
was it like we got something placed at REI? We're good. Probably it seems like where they really went with this.
We have something placed at REI that looks like it belongs in Colombia. Right. It's just this. So the imagination of really what could be here from a core European brand. Right. There's a story there for sure. Their originator, they're on par with Patagonia in terms of helping propagate polar tech and fleece from the 80s and 90s in terms of that look that we now call kind of the vintage look. They had a big hand in that. In fact, at one point, I think they were one of the largest cut and sewers of fleece in the world with their own factory factories in Europe back at that time.
That's awesome.
Major players. So really helped create that whole concept. And so there's a lot that could be told that they just were unwilling to do over here. And so to me, it's a little unsurprising that they're kind of slinking back to their den. Sorry, but that had to make that.
Back to the pack.
Yeah, back to the pack, right?
I come back to, like, do they need to come back here at all? I mean, everything you just said, right? I mean, I don't even know how you would fix the assortment so that it stands out. If there's management issues, great, work on that. But we're so over distributed. The types of products you mentioned are like a lot of things we already have. So I don't know, like to come back, it almost feels like, did you sort of overvalue them, Topgolf, Callaway, and be like, oh, it's an outdoor brand that does all this incredible things like you just mentioned in Europe. It'll just kill it here in the U.S. And it's like, well, actually, 99% of their line is like all the stuff we already have here. So maybe the thing to watch is like, how do smaller brands who do have a unique story perform, like a Houdini, folks like that who kind of like, do they start to get traction, and then there starts to be a demand for Saleva, these kind of brands that aren't as entrenched here yet or as broadly distributed, and then maybe there's a path there.
Right.
I don't know. It's like, to your point, it's bringing Jack Wolfskin here is introducing another Columbia. I mean, it's basically what it is.
Right. And again, without any, you're not setting the table for what your value or your distinct proposition is. Right. And so,
if it's like, homemade, a fleece using quality fabric, and I made it in our own factories, like, well, there's your story. But even then, we got a lot of fleece here already.
That's more of the authenticity, why I'm going to believe you, and why that's the kind of that setting table. But you have to reintroduce. I'm a big believer in the one step back, two step forward when you are reintroducing a brand or relaunching a brand, or let's say kind of polishing a damaged piece. You have to take that time to give people the logic system to then assess your brand off of. Do you fit this box of authenticity? Yes, no. If it's yes, now I can start telling other contemporary stories and why you're going to want me now. But I've got to. So we're all starting with the same page of kind of facts, if you will, and they didn't do that basic work, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, good luck, Jack Wolfskin. Hopefully, maybe we'll see you again here soon. I think right now, Sierra might be licking their chops, going, "Come back to the U.S. We need your stuff."
Passport should be good for another 8 years, so they should be okay. Right.
All right, we got a new segment to end the show today, and going forward, called our parting shot. And this can be anything. This doesn't have to be outdoor related. And Dave and I are just going to bring our own parting shot to the table. Mine is, I saw Alien Romulus over the weekend, and it was awesome, and I loved it. And I started really thinking about it. And as much as I've been so down on Star Wars lately, I think Alien is the preeminent sci-fi action franchise of our time. Everyone can sit there and talk about why Star Wars is the shit and continues to be like the one we talk about the most. It gets the most attention. But there's been more good Alien movies than bad Alien movies, and certainly more good Alien movies than Star Wars movies. So that's my parting shot. I'm taking a shot at Star Wars. Screw you, Star Wars. All you do is make me sad. So that's my parting shot.
Wow. That
Yep.
We just can't believe we're leaving that just sit there. But
that's it. A lot to unpack, but this is not an Alien or Star Wars podcast.
My parting shot is actually the book Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard.
Controversial. What is that?
No, it's not a new book. I just reread it again this summer. She is the researcher who helped create a correlation between fungus and tree roots talking to one another, and that the idea that the forest is far more connected and interdependent on each other than we ever knew.
I thought this was LSD that led to that happening.
That was prior to writing of the book. But it's a wonderful story of just kind of working against the grain, in terms of the way our systems are set up, in terms of government and academia kind of not always being the most welcome to new ideas, and how persistence kind of over time can help you crack that nut. And it's a great, fabulous story. So I recommend it highly.
How was that a shot? What are you taking a shot at?
I'm taking a shot at big science, man. Think you can push back? No, there are rebels. There are rogues. Right.
Make sure when you're getting your COVID booster next month, make sure that you're like, hey, man, big science. Have you read this book?
Dude, that's right. Trees talk to each other. Deal with it.
I saw Lord of the Rings.
Deal with it.
I know they do.
Dude, don't call them trees. Those are Ents.
They're
you
Ents.
just pissed off
They're
a
Ents.
bunch
You're
of
right.
angry.
I know. They're going to come step on my house.
Or drop kick you like an orc.
All right, we can wrap it up there. What is going on this week? We have another conversation coming from Christina Henderson from Switchback. She's going to come on later this week to tell us about all the news coming out of Switchback over the last week. We chatted about last week. She's going to give us some updates there. Then we have Gear and Beer on Friday, where we're talking to a journalist who wrote an article for Gear Junkie. I'm just going to tease it right there. That's what's going on Gear and Beer on Friday. And I teased it last week, but I think it might actually happen that Saturday could actually be the return of Justin Hausman. Maybe he'll never return. We'll just keep teasing it. We'll see what happens. But Justin's been over on Gear and Beer, but he hasn't been back on the Rock Fight in a while. He's been really busy. So I think Saturday you might hear his lovely voice
become a campfire
again.
story.
It might be. Yeah, the legend of Hausman.
Right.
The legend of the Houseman. Right. The Rock Fight's a production of Rock Fight LLC. Our producer today, you heard him throughout the episode, David Karstad. Art direction by the bedrock-clad Sarah Gensert. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And here to take us out, it's Chris DeMakes, who's still on tour over in Europe, but he's checking in to sing the Rock Fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters. Rock Fight!